At least one-third of Sudan's 46 million people are in need of humanitarian aid amid short supply of essential goods and services and widespread looting of humanitarian supplies in the country, as the UN now seeks to have its operational requirements met by both warring factions.
Number one, clear, definitive agreements, commitments in writing, in public, of the parties to protect the movement of humanitarian supplies, humanitarian workers, to stop the looting, where that happens, of humanitarian stocks, so that aid agencies can do the job they only know best. And number two, the generosity of the international community, of governments around the world, to pay for the needs of the Sudanese people who have such a suffering and such difficulties at this time.
Griffiths says he hopes to meet both Generals al-Burhan and Dagalo face-to-face in the next days to press the humanitarian case, even if proposed ceasefires are not observed.
Humanitarians universally do this. Even when there is no formal national ceasefire, we will still require agreements and arrangements to allow for movement of staff and supplies. We will need to have agreement at the highest level and very publicly, and we will need to deliver those commitments into local arrangements that can be depended on. We need access, we need airlift, we need supplies that don't get looted. World Food Programme today, James informed me, 6 trucks of theirs, which were going to Darfur, were looted en route, despite assurances of safety and security. So it's a volatile environment.
Khartoum is in turmoil.
Earlier, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called on the international community to pressure both leaders to stop fighting, as the human rights impact of the conflict is now framed as equally catastrophic, with trust between the parties obliterated.
The human rights impact of the current fighting has been catastrophic. It's heartbreaking. On Monday, an airstrike by the Sudanese military reportedly hit the vicinity of a hospital in the East Nile area of Khartoum. The RSF has taken over numerous residential buildings in Khartoum to use as operational bases, launching attacks from densely inhabited urban areas. Civilians continue to be placed at acute risk and are prevented from accessing critical supplies and assistance. In short, the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution have been trampled by both parties, which I strongly condemn.
The UN says that of its pre-conflict $1.7 billion humanitarian appeal for Sudan, only $200 million has been funded. Since the fighting began, over 300,000 Sudanese have been displaced internally, while more than 100,000 have fled to neighboring countries, places like Chad, South Sudan, the Central African Republic and Ethiopia. Equally fragile states where any spillover in fighting could be destabilizing for the entire region. And whether a 7-day ceasefire brokered by South Sudan and due to start Thursday holds or not, the urgent need for assurances around humanitarian relief is now being framed as an entirely separate issue, whether the guns fall silent or not. Sherwin Riceby's SABC News, New York.